bobbing when the red, red robin comes. Bobbing when the red, red robin comes. Bobbing along.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are a reputable East Hull-based car specialist and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members. Welcome to a special edition of the Robin Pod Weekly, which is, of course, the second Robin Pod of the week. Joining me for this one is a very special guest, as the man behind the mic, BBC Sport commentator Matt Newsum, helps us look forward to Saturday's game against the Warrington Wolves. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm great, Johno. Yeah, Wembley week, Challenge Cup final week. Doesn't get better, does it? It's genuine excitement. Buzzing from the kind of, as soon as the kind of last weekend was boxed off, it was like, now we can talk about Wembley. Now we can focus on Wembley and all the excitement of a Challenge Cup final, which it's one of the. I love grand finals and I love the playoffs and stuff like that. And I love the internationals, but I just think the Challenge Cups, even it's had plenty of stick, but I still think it's that competition which has so much romance, so much magic about it. So yeah, absolutely buzzing for this weekend, mate.
Yeah, the Challenge Cup, it's the slightly new format this season, and if I'm honest, I was totally dead against the amateur clubs and coming in against the Super League clubs. I thought it'd be a whitewash, and I had the privilege of being at Craven Park for the St Helens West Hull game, and for me, that's when it gave me FA Cup third round vibes, you know, the chance that these amateurs could go toe-to-toe with a Super League club. And to be fair, I think actually they got it right in terms of when that round's played, because Super League teams are still in their infancy after pre-season. And then you've got the amateurs who were just wanting to give it a go. And I think, you know, for me, someone who criticised it, I'm glad it's there. And I hope they continue that format going forward.
Yeah, I think it's always difficult, isn't it? Because of the sort of contact nature of rugby league and the physicality of it. You did sort of fear for sort of massacres, didn't you? And players, you know, maybe coming out of it, and Super League players, you know, fearing about their fitness after those games, having been maybe targeted by players. But you're right, I was at that game as well, and I just felt it was those players. They didn't want to drag. The kind of players from those amateur clubs, community clubs, didn't want to drag the game down to their level. They wanted to rise to the level that they were playing against. So you actually saw some really nice rugby played. You saw some really tough, committed players getting the chance to test themselves against some of the best players in the league. And yeah, I think it was a win-win for everybody. And you're right, I think it injected a little bit of interest into the competition, because clearly you're not going to get 12 sort of community clubs in there, so it was a smattering, wasn't it, of community clubs against some, and then some Championship and some League One. And I think, yeah, you're right. It definitely gave it that flavour, didn't it? A bit like, you know, you were going back to the 70s or 80s, where it was like kind of open draw, and anybody could find themselves playing anybody, and the idea of there would be some shocks. And whilst we didn't see that with the community game, you know, with Bradford knocking out Castleford, that was exactly what I think it was intended to produce, wasn't it? That it was supposed to get something that kind of caught the imagination a little bit. And I think you're right. The community game showed itself in a really good light, because those players really stood up to the occasions that they were kind of treated to. The top level clubs were professional about their business, got the job done, and progressed as you might have kind of expected, but it wasn't that in a kind of way that made you think, well, that was pointless exercise. Like you, I think it was a special moment for some of those community players. Good chance for some younger players to get a run out as well. So we saw some stars of the future. I mean, George Whitby played really well in that game, didn't he? And look where he's gone on to play for St Helens this season as well. So yeah, I'm with you. I think I think it's so difficult with the way that, you know, the structure of the kind of rugby league and the way that the kind of disparity between top and bottom, even in terms of the league kind of pyramid within rugby league, to get those meaningful fixtures, you know, between top and lower end clubs is difficult. But I think if you're going to strike a bargain somewhere in the middle, I agree with you. I think that was probably just about the right way to do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned interest as well, Matt. I mean, the crowd at Craven Park as well to see that, and then that was people from across the city just coming in and enjoying a spectacle. That was why I was there. I just wanted to see what would happen, what would unfold, and I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of appetite for that to come back. You're the lead commentator on Saturday, Matt. Now the players, supporters, coaches, officials will be nervous. How are your nerves holding up ahead of Saturday?
Yeah, this thankfully is now my second one. And if you'd spoken to me 12 months ago, because we're practically the same week in terms of how it's all lined up, it's almost practically a year. It will be almost a year to the day. If you'd asked me 12 months ago, I was absolutely bricking it, if that's the kind of appropriate terms. I'd spoke to Dave Woods, who's a really good friend of mine, and he had sort of told me, he said, "Oh, you're only the fourth person to do it. You've had Eddie Waring, Ray French, himself, and he said, and there's you." And that really
no pressure then.
Honestly, mate, that really spooked me. I went, and it's not like I didn't know it, because if I'd watched these, I had a Challenge Cup video when I was a kid. It was presented by Harry Gratian. It was to mark 100 years of the Challenge Cup, so it culminated with the final between Bradford and Saints, and there were extended highlights of that. But it was a run through of the Challenge Cup throughout its history, and obviously bits of Pathé News footage, and then eventually started to get the BBC bits. So I would know these bits of commentary from games long before I was born. So Vaughan Thomas intercepting for Featherstone against Barrow in 1967, and Peter Glynn one, and anyway, I was like, and he batted it down, Peter Glynn, and I used to know all these bits of commentary off by heart. So it's not like I didn't know about these. That was the lineage of it. But when it was kind of put to me in black and white, I just got completely spooked. And so I was trying to do my prep, but all week I was just thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I've got to get this right. I've got to be on top form. And I think it was only when finally Mark Chapman said, "And now we'll hand over to our commentary team." And he said, "Jonathan Davis, Brian Noble, and Matt Newsum." And it was almost as if at that point, it was like fight or flight. What am I going to do here? And it was as if somebody had just plugged me in, and I just went into sort of professional mode or whatever it was. Something in me just went, right, this is it. You can't go anywhere here. You've got to crack on. And then it was all right. And so once I'd kind of got over the bit of the intro, and there's so many kind of little bits of pageantry, aren't there, at the cup final, that you almost have to hit, thankfully Abide With Me had been, because I would probably been a mess. I think we'd and all those little bits. So thankfully a lot of that pageantry had gone, and it was like, get your team news bits out, the team boards out of the way, then we'll get kick-off, then you're into the game, and then it feels a bit more like players say, where it's like, well, then it's just a patch of grass. And at that point, I'm just watching a game. And Wembley and all the kind of grandeur around it is kind of becomes sort of second nature. But yeah, I didn't enjoy the build up to it last year at all. I was a fidgety mess up on the gantry. But this year, I feel like, I'm not saying that I'm anywhere near Ray French or Eddie Waring or Dave Woods, but I at least feel comfortable in my own skin. And for that point, I'm really looking forward to Saturday, just from a basis of, I'm going to get there, I can pick my mic up, and when they hand to me, I'm hoping that my enthusiasm, the excitement that's got me through all the other games, and it's not to everyone's taste, because I'll probably get a little bit shouty, but that will start to come through, and my enthusiasm for the game and for the match that I'm covering will hopefully come through, and it won't be a case of butterflies in the stomach from a sick perspective, more from an excited one.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, Matt, the synergy with what you're saying, and in terms of Rovers on Saturday, in terms of some of the Robins key players, obviously featured against Leigh in the Challenge Cup final previously. We've got players who've played in big games, and I look to earlier on in the season when we played our rivals from across the river in the quarter final, and I was then, obviously the Robins got the victory, and then the subsequent league game, I was so confident of getting the victory because all the new players who've never experienced that derby before, going into it a second time, they know the venue, they know the routine, they know the changing, and it's that familiarity actually that gives the players, a bit like yourself, Matt, that just added level of confidence, and then you sort of relax because you know what's going to come. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen in the game, but you know where your spot is, you know the rehearsal, you know where to go to toilet, all them little things that cause anxiety for some people. For you, the players, even supporters, it just lessens it.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, you're right. It's not quite like putting the the kind of old faithful pair of slippers on. I'm sorry to say old faithful on this program, but
well, thanks for coming on, Matt. This is the second and last time that you've ever been on.
Yeah, sorry, that's a black mark, isn't it, against my name, that one. But yeah, it's not quite putting the pair of slippers on, the comfortable pair of slippers on, but it's definitely a sense that you know what to expect, and there's not going to be that kind of emotional, almost like shockwave when you see that crowd, or when you walk out the tunnel, even to warm up, and you get that roar, and it must be, that takes some getting used to, because Craven Park's booming on a match day, and likewise going into the Lions' Den of like Hull FC's ground on a derby day. That's a cacophony. But I think it's just the sheer size of Wembley, isn't it, that it could spook some players. But you get the sense, don't you, now that with 𝗂𝗂𝗃𝗲𝗏, and I think 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗏𝗃 sort of touched upon it at the media day, where he was sort of saying, well, look, we've played in this run up to this cup final, we played 2 derbies, we played all the big guns in Super League, we've played in grand finals, some of us have had a taste of that Challenge Cup final before. I get the feeling now that 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗏𝗃 are probably able to set their minds to just getting the job done, whatever environment they're put in, and obviously Saturday will be the litmus test for that. But for every challenge they've been handed so far this year, apart from that Wigan game, they've passed with absolute flying colours. And I just get a feeling when you see the players in how they've responded to getting to Wembley and not allowing that to derail any of the progress as well. I just think that there's a real stubborn and almost intensity about them that they're comfortable in their own skins as well, aren't they? And it's a bit like you said, in the comparison with like what I'm doing, you get the sense that once they put their shirt on and those tie up the boots and the socks and shorts and socks are on, then it's like it's game zone. And I think lots of players who I've spoken to about Wembley, for us, obviously, it's great just going there, isn't it, and seeing it and getting you spellbound by it all. But I think players are like, well, I don't really have a great memory of Wembley unless I come away with a winner's medal. And so it's all hand in hand, isn't it? So I think now they can say, well, once we win, then I'll enjoy Wembley. So yeah, you can see. I think 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗏𝗃 are going to this game with just such a. I think the fact that lots of people are tipping them to win it, I think it shows is a real testament to what they've done as a team.
Yeah, but of course, Matt, Rovers do go into that game as favourites. The problem is with sport, Matt, and this is the reason why we all love it, and that's why it is absolute box office, in particular the Challenge Cup final, is you're never 100% sure, are you? You're never quite, you might be confident, you might be the favourites, but until the final hooter goes after 80 minutes, you're not quite sure how that result's going to come. And Warrington, they'll be looking at some of them players who are coming back ready for Saturday, and they will be fancying their chances. And that is for you as a commentator and for the BBC, and that is why it's such a magical game, and that's why it gets the coverage it does, and that's why it gets the audiences it does, because you're never quite sure.
No, absolutely agree. It is that sense of what you could get the shock, and I think Warrington, if you look at them throughout the Challenge Cup this year, they've probably raised their game, haven't they? And that again, like you say, sums up just how important it is. I mean, I thought when I looked at the team sheets for the Leigh semi-final, I thought, well, I fancied Leigh here, and Warrington came out and did a job that was almost, they looked like a team unrecognisable from the team that played the subsequent weekend against Wakefield, and the team that had played the week before I think it was against yourselves, was it? Or was it? Yeah.
And we played.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, Matt. You carry on.
Yeah. So they just looked. It was a performance that had almost come out of nothing. They'd almost you could tell that they had raised their game for this. And going back to that video that I used to have when I was a kid that I sort of ran to death, like Featherstone 83, Sheffield 98, those games stick in the memory because that's what happens in the Challenge Cup. The little mining villages beating the might of Humberside, as Ray French put it, which is it could geographically incorrect, but correct in terms of the magnitude of the result. And Sheffield Eagles, Nick Pinkney, who's obviously a favourite at Rovers, scoring the tries, but part of the tries there, Mark Aston, and those cup finals, those are the ones that resonate. But I mean, I think it's interesting that Warrington and someone like Sam Burgess, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they like the idea that they would be going into this as some kind of underdog, and actually not dealing with that probably might be something quite an interesting dynamic for them. But yeah, because normally I don't think they would come into a final as an underdog. Maybe last year they might have felt it when they were playing Wigan, but I think it would be. I think you're right. The intrigue around this final is there's so many little questions that we'll only know, won't we, around about 5 o'clock. So 4:45, 5 o'clock, depending on video refs.
Well,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
We might be threatening the 1895 kickoff time.
yeah, you're right. Too many captain's challenges, and we could be right in trouble.
Well, you was at the press day, Matt. Was it a standard? Was it just a standard answers from the players? Did you get a sense of the feeling, or was it pretty? I suppose it's early on in the week, isn't it? And the players, coaches, the well drilled now out there. They know what to say, when to say it. What vibe was you getting from it?
I got a really good vibe from 𝗬𝗂𝗃𝗲𝗏. They could easily have the way that they were carrying themselves. They could easily have been like a members barbecue or something, rather than a really formal media appearance. And I think that rubs off because Willie's great. Really gives you good lines, and he's a good talker, and he's a good bloke for starters. But you can tell that he doesn't want to set traps for himself or say it. So he's probably trying to keep a lid on some of it. But I just felt there was it's clearly no arrogance from the Robins players, as you say, because they are well drilled and they know that nobody wants to hang themselves in the week before the cup final and be pinned up on the wall of the opposition dressing room. But there was just a quiet confidence, like a sort of genuine, again, going back to being comfortable in their own skin, knowing that they've earned this opportunity by being a good team, and they've keep earning these opportunities by being a good team, and that this is something to embrace. The pressure, I mean, Elliot Manchella probably wishes he got a £1 every time he said pressure is a privilege.
Alan Shearer, I love that montage in the what was the Euros, wasn't it?
That's right.
Fantastic montage what they could do, and you're so right.
And you can tell that is almost although it's I'm like it's like half-hearted, like jokingly saying that about Elliot Manchella, because I really think Elliot Manchella is one of the best talkers in Super League, and it's no surprise that he's been doing a bit of media stuff as well. But I think I think it's a mantra that the players clearly have taken on board. It's a nice soundbite, but it's actually a good way to kind of live your rugby league life by, isn't it? That if you only get pressure by being in these positions, and the players are becoming more comfortable at being in the position where they're gonna be under scrutiny on the pitch, because it's a major game and an honour is kind of up for grabs. So if you were doing a kind of body language survey or kind of sort of sociological, what are the message of the players giving off, you could only say that 𝗬𝗂𝗃𝗲𝗏 looked like a team ready to go. Yeah.
The biggest takeaways for me as well is obviously George Williams stating that he's available, he's fit, and he's going to play. And then, of course, Willie Peters revealing that Mickey McIlaurin could be featured in the final, which is a remarkable turnaround. Of course, we saw Mark Sneyd recover from his eye injury, and he came back much quicker than people anticipated. We've now got that with Mickey Mac, and there's no guarantee he's going to play, but he's in the frame. And as a commentator, as a the BBC Sport, these are the stories you want heading into the final, because it creates that intrigue, adds to the spectacle. Will it have an effect on the game? It's a talking point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the personalities that you're talking about as well, George Williams, England captain, Warrington captain, Mickey McIlaurin, he's a tough bloke, isn't he? But he's a winner, and he was part of that Wigan team that won countless trophies. He won the cup with Catalan, which is a huge achievement when you consider just how little time they've kind of been in business. And you know, he was a big part of that, with that steel, that winner's mentality. And you know, he said, didn't he, when he arrived, I come to Rovers because I want to win some more trophies. And so he's obviously identified it, and if, you know, he'll be busting a gut to get back. And you know, obviously the Mark Sneyd angle is one that, you know, he'll be a marked man, absolutely, which is, you know, quite right. And I'm sure he knows that plenty of pressure's coming his way. But you're right. One, you want the best players to be playing, and you know, we're going to get that. Two, you, as you say, you want those little storylines which make things interesting going into the final, and it ramps up the interest, and hopefully, like, sort of people who you might just stumble across some kind of coverage of the game before the match, sort of see this like excitement and kind of willy won't-y sort of thing, and decide to tune in. So it kind of pumps it up a bit extra. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. On with the kind of George Williams thing, it's like kind of you sort of see what he's had to go through to get back. You know, he's going to have a big target on his back, and again, I don't want to bring up a final upon which the other side of the city won it, but I always think when you rush players back, all that goes through my mind is Keith Senior, 2005, and it's like, yeah, he's a massive part of your team, but the risk has to be based upon reward, doesn't it? And it's like, you know, that I think that will be going through a few players' minds. It's like, is he going to be a Keith Senior? Is he going to last the course? Is it going to completely unravel because that player's been pushed into it, and you know, they're not quite ready? So it'll be really interesting to see if those players who do get wheeled out, who've been out for a while, last the course, and what kind of treatment they get.
Yeah, I mean, Wembley looks big on TV, and when you get there and you see the pitch, it looks even bigger. So when players, if they're not 100%, they will soon feel it. It absolutely zaps the energy out of them. Obviously, the players are preparing for it. The supporters are preparing for it. How's your preparation going ahead of Saturday?
Yeah, I haven't quite got my Nerds book out, which has appeared on the Robin Pod before. That will come a little bit later in the week. But yeah, I've already I've been sort of transcribing a few of the interviews for some pieces to go on BBC Sport. And you kind of, I mean, I look through my book and it's like, 𝗂𝗂𝗃, Warrington, 𝗂𝗂𝗃. You know, I've seen plenty, because these are two teams who, well, particularly 𝗂𝗂𝗃, they're a team that Sky put on quite a lot. We tend to do I do a lot of 5 Live games when there's no Super League on TV, so tend to be on a lot of those 𝗂𝗂𝗃 games. So I've seen plenty of the two teams, which is helpful actually from a perspective of preparing for this. You know, I've got plenty of sort of muscle memory of it, but it's the sort of cup final specifics that towards the back end of the week I'll be really looking for, and you know, where players have, you know, had previous opportunities and that sort of thing. And some of it springs to mind straight away. And you know, as you're saying, the players who are featured in 2023, those are the ones that cut mark up. But then it's the 𝗪𝗂𝗋𝗄𝗎𝗓𝗄𝗓 where, you know, they've played in finals before and that kind of thing. So I really enjoy that sort of bedding down and trying to find a little nugget that can get thrown out into the commentary, but also, you know, you don't want to be too nerdy that you miss the kind of storyline on the day. So I think that's quite a balancing act, you know. And it's probably a bit, you know, like it's the same as players, isn't it? Play the occasion. Do you take the emotion out of it? You know, so kind of the approach of the commentator as a little bit of that mental preparation as well, about making sure that you're in the right headspace. But it's fail to prepare is to, you know, prepare to fail sort of thing. So I will have my Nerds book out, and if the result goes the right way and you want me to display it for you, I'll come on.
Well, we know the players and especially supporters have pre-match rituals. Is there anything you do, Matt, that you do on a match day, or particularly the Challenge Cup final?
Challenge Cup, I always like to go for a walk around Wembley, and that's normally sort of in the morning, just before, you know, while it's still quite quiet and still quite calm, because obviously it ramps up pretty mega, doesn't it? I mean, last year what I really missed was there was an England international on the night before at Wembley, which, I mean, I still think it's like absolute carnage. I can't believe that they did that. But it meant that there was one, no captain's run for the players, and two, you missed that buzz, because the year before, with all the 𝗂𝗂𝗃 and the Leigh fans who were so excited about, you know, coming back to Wembley, and they're not the usual suspects, it made the buzz on Wembley Way and the buzz up on like the bars and the pubs and the restaurants around Wembley, even the night before, was so good that it was like last year was just lost, because it becomes like Wembley was like locked down when there's football on. and you couldn't get into things to just have a meal like until like 9 o'clock or something stupid like that. So it was a buzzkill, and I'm thinking this year, particularly again with 𝗀𝗂𝗯𝗏, like where everywhere you go is absolutely buzzing. I'm just really looking forward to that sensation. But yeah, on the day, go for my walk, and then beforehand on the gantry, I feel bad because I really like working with my summarisers. I think this year, I mean, don't quote me yet. It's not. I think it's Brian Noble and Jonathan Davis, but I'm not 100% sure. But they're quite sociable, and I like to chat to them. But before game, I just sort of sit there quite quietly, and it's like almost like getting yourself in the headspace and sort of prepare and just trying to stay calm. So yeah, I can probably appear a bit aloof and antisocial before the game, but it's more that I'm just kind of getting my head right and thinking through things. I've remembered that stat, don't forget that one, and keep that, what are the trails, the bits that come up, and what you've got to link towards and stuff like that. And so simple things like that, just sort of getting my head in the game. But in a way, the note taking and the note making in the book with all the stats and that kind of thing, that's part of my kind of preparation for it. But on the day, yeah, it's like trying to stay calm, because internally I'm absolutely blowing a gasket. So yeah.
Well, I suppose it's that thing of game face, isn't it? The players do it. It's that game face. And I think you mentioned earlier on when we were recording this, it's that fight or flight. You either do it or you don't. And also, I mean, one thing I've always wondered is whether commentators, and maybe some do, everyone's different, whether the rehearse lines, whether they have set lines ready to go if something happens, or is it literally spontaneous in terms of reacting to what you see and just coming up? Because there's been some famous commentary lines over time, hasn't they?
Yeah.
And you think, how have you come up with that line at that time and nailed it to the point where it then stands its time in good stead for history?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't like to rehearse lines because, well, I think you can just, when you just be constantly thinking, is this the right time to jam that in? Rather, I mean, you're right. I guess you understand the storylines, and they're probably in the back of your mind when things are happening. So it might be a player's last game or a landmark fixture for someone, and you might have that in the back of your mind as you're kind of coming towards something. But then again, I mean, the one that you were talking about, we were talking about, I can't remember if it was before we came on, but the sort of Brad Schneider moment, and that's one of my favourite moments, mainly because I think some people, because it was so important to so many people, that drop goal, it's nothing to do with what I said. It just so happened to be the soundtrack to it for certain people. But the fact that people kind of took that as like, and they kind of tweeted it or whatever, and that's massive to me. That's a bit like having somebody, have your name on the back of their shirt or whatever. It's kind of that for me. If anybody had, kind of thinks of that commentary line when they think of that moment, then that for me is like gold dust. Like you say, that is immortalization. And so I'm, I wouldn't personally rehearse lines. I can see why some people do it, and like I say, you might have those little trigger points which you've been thinking about that might then get some plucked out of your brain. But I would say most commentators are spontaneous, and then lucky if they get it right. Because as you say, those commentary lines that stick in your head, and I'm thinking like Jonathan Davis, Ray French, he's pinned his ears back, he's gone over the line, and he's and the Martin Afire one, where he's like, that must be one of the greatest tries ever scored at Wembley, and you're thinking, yeah, exactly. But I think it's just spontaneous luck. I think if you find that magic moment and you manage to call it right,
there you go. You're becoming an encyclopedia of commentators' one-liners.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Let's finish with this, Matt. What are you most looking forward to on Saturday?
I'm most looking forward to Abide With Me, because, as I said before, it always makes me cry. I don't know why.
Make sure the microphone's off.
Yeah. Well, normally Mark Chapman still lets that one breathe, and then he does that, and then he hands to me, and then I've obviously sorted myself out and got myself back in the zone. So yeah, I think I'm most looking forward to that roar when the players come out, Abide With Me, the roar when the players get, and then that moment where when the kickoff and you get that boom of like both sets of fans again roar, and then it's into it, and then it's like from that point on, it's like anything can happen. So I think all the structure of that and the kind of pageantry and the sort of pomp and ceremony of the cup final day, I really enjoy. And then that moment where it's off and now anything can happen, and it's like no holds barred. That's what I'm really looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to seeing whether 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗲 can deliver, because all the ingredients are there. Absolutely, all the ingredients are there. And I covered the derby in the quarters. I covered the semi-final against Catalan, and it's just at times some of the rugby has been phenomenal. And if they can deliver that on a Wembley stage, then hopefully I'll have some more good memories, good commentary moments to add to my repertoire. But yeah, that moment where it all kind of, it's like, this is it, the boom of the roar around Wembley. Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Singing a song when the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing. When the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing. When the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing along.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗲𝗏 Rovers Forever members.